Thank you. Bear in mind, I'm from Secwepemc, not from Rough Spring. But I'm going to describe my understanding of this building and some of the teachings that come with it. The building is circular. You see it, my estimation is the replica of a cedar bark hat. The weavings bark was used to weave capes, clothes, also for making ropes. And while the artist never started was not here, I believe some of her art for the kitchen, some of her fabric. And Deborah was not self-taught. She spent a lot of time with her great-grandfather and learning about the stories about the reading. About 30, 40 years ago, she and her sister Robin started reading. Not an easy task, because up until the time I was 7 years old in 1951, the potlatch law was in effect. It hasn't been from 1876 to 1951, which made it against the law. It was against the law for me to have this discussion with you. For a period of time, it was against the law for any person, Native Indian over 50 years of age, to have a conversation of any sort with people, 6 or more people under 6 years old. So that put a stop to the oral tradition. It was against the law to do cultural things, to practice the culture, to teach about weaving, whether it was here or across as well. I believe this is a carving by Susan Point. And in the center is a spindle wheel, which was used to spin the yarn that used to make fabric. The spindle wheel represents, in Coastal Salish tradition, the female side of creation. The female side of creation, cosmos, Mother Earth, Grandmother Moon. The female side of the tall ones, the trees and the grasses that grow. The female side of the animal kingdom, the winged, the fin, the 4 legs. Female side of 2 legs. But also to get teaching from the spindle world that in every male, to be a complete male, there's a reflection of a female. And in every female is a reflection of a male. We have the two-spirited who have the gifts of both. And to be a complete human being, it's important that we draw upon each other. The weavings is the heron. They tell the stories, the canoe, the water. And the weavers were held in high esteem. Not just in Coastal Salish, where I had the opportunity to spend time here at the Roa. And the weavers there are held in high esteem. The weavers of Mesopotamia, Persia, Afghanistan. The warp and the woof. I know those terms, I think they're correct. My wife, Barbara, is a retired economic policy analyst and has been a mixed media fabric artist. And last count, I think there were 6 looms in our house. But the warp is the basis upon which the art book is established. And that varies from artist to artist and culture to culture. And it, as much as we see, I see that as a recovering quantitative researcher, qualitative researcher. If you had a warp, which is in a specific form, that's your theoretical construct. And you can only do what's made available to you within that warp. Makes sense. I have to get my wife Barbara's permission. So those are the stories. Again, it was at a time challenging when for Deborah and others to learn the history of the people, because it was against the law from 7 generations. I'll get into that in a few moments. But welcome again to Secwepemc, the people of the river grass. This area is known as Shut. It is the place of transition, because right now the swimmers, the sockeye, they're going up the river, and they're transitioning from their 3 or 4 years in the salt water to make their way up into fresh water. So their bodies are changing as they make their way in their last journey home. Okay. Give this time to Barbara. Sharon.
His work and those of others are the reason that we have a strong and accountable profession in BC. It's the reason we have both the regulation with BC College of Social Workers and an association to the voice, the advocacy voice both for our profession and for social justice. I know Dr. Vedan was chair of the Board of Registration in 1996, having served earlier in 1994. So he's worked hard and long to support the profession in BC. I'm not going to say too much because I really want to hear some of his stories, and I know he has many. So I'm going to turn that over, unless Barbara, do you have more to say about the award first? Oh yes, how could we forget the originator of this award, Paul Cheng
from his early career in Hong Kong to his work in Canada left lasting impact on colleagues, supervisors, and students alike. One of Paul's most remarkable contributions was his response to the arrival of Fijian Chinese refugees on the shore of British Columbia over 25 years ago. And in the crisis of human trafficking, Paul was one of the first to act, working tirelessly day and night to provide immediate care. His efforts continued for months, ensuring that refugees received appropriate care and settlement and integration into the country. So for his extraordinary service during this unprecedented situation, Paul was awarded the Gold Award from the Public Service Employee Relations Committee. In memory of Paul Cheng, this award recognizes social workers who, like Paul, see social work as a calling rather than just a job. Paul believed in a ripple effect of positive change where one person's action inspire and uplift others. So this award continues his legacy by celebrating those who embody his spirit of service and dedication. And this year we mark actually the 10th year anniversary of this award, and we reflect on Paul's life and the many social workers who carry his spirit forward. As we had mentioned that we're so very pleased and honored to award Dr. Richard Vedan the Inspiring Social Work of the Year Award. And on behalf of the committee, I want to say that it was really a challenging decision because we received nominations for exceptional social workers from various areas of practice at different stages of the career. And we really wanted to honor and recognize all of their contributions. We strategized different ways to be able to recognize their contributions. But we knew that there was really only one that stood out among them in terms of their exceptional lifetime achievements in transforming social work research, policy, practice, and education. Because we have a little extra time, I'm gonna share a bit about Dr. Richard Vedan because he has quite a phenomenal CV and again just achievements in the area of social work. So Dr. Richard Vedan, a distinguished member of this Secwepemc band of the Secwepemc First Nations. Dr. Vedan's remarkable journey in social work is rooted in his 11 years of service with the Royal Canadian Air Force, where he trained as a navigator and later served as a social work officer for Air Command, retiring with the rank of captain. Dr. Vedan's relationship with the University of British Columbia spans decades, beginning with his graduation with the MSW in 1973, a milestone as one of only 2 Indigenous people in Canada to hold such a degree at the time. He later joined the UBC School of Social Work as an associate professor in 1994 and earned his PhD from Simon Fraser University in 2002. And his contributions to UBC have been profound, particularly through his leadership as director of the UBC First Nations House of Learning and as the inaugural senior advisor to the UBC president on Aboriginal affairs. A visionary educator, Dr. Vedan initiated the First Nations Bachelor Social Work program at the request of the Squamish First Nations, providing essential social work education to Squamish, Sechelt, and Leblot First Nations students from 2003 to 2010, which is a program that had not been offered since. Dr. Vedan's commitment to traditional practice is equally commendable, having volunteered as a sweat lodge keeper at UBC First Nations House of Learning for 20 years, offering guidance and ceremonies to students and community members. In recognition of his outstanding service, Dr. Vedan was awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal in 2012, honoring his contributions to community service and as an Aboriginal veteran. So upon his retirement in 2014, he was appointed Associate Professor Emeritus at UBC School of Social Work and continues to serve as an Elder Scholar for the First Nations and First Nations Admissions Advisor. He also volunteers as Elder Scholar for the Simon Fraser University Faculty of Education, mentoring graduate students and junior faculty, and is a member of the Indigenous Education and Reconciliation Council. There's still so much more that I can say. These are just like little bits of highlights, and there's just so many. I want to share a few words from students and faculty in his nomination. Here's one with his nomination letter. His career exemplifies a strong commitment to social justice and Indigenous education, and his highly ethical, kind, caring, and modest way have supported and inspired so many to give service to others with the same high standards that he holds. This is from a social work Indigenous student. Richard has become a huge part of my life as the school social work elder faculty and just a mentor. During COVID, my mental health deteriorated very rapidly. Richard was brought in as an elder for me to talk to weekly or as needed during the week. Our relationship grew and my mental health stabilized. That was partly how I was able to survive the COVID pandemic and the drastic restrictions put in place. I'm forever grateful to Richard. This is from a social work faculty. As an elder scholar in our school, Elder Richard has provided leadership and guidance to students, faculty, and the school in their efforts towards reconciliation and to indigenize and decolonize social work education. I have appreciated his teachings, his honest reflections regarding our work, and his unwavering commitment to achieve social justice for Indigenous people. So Dr. Vedan's enduring dedication to students, colleagues, and his profession and community truly exemplifies the spirit of this award, and it's a privilege to recognize his lifetime of contributions, and I welcome Dr. Richard Vedan to offer the Paul Memorial Lecture. We're going to change up the format. We're going to offer the award, take some photos, and then you can deliver the lecture.
Need a few moments to organize my audiovisual aids and my comfort blanket. Welcome. It is truly an honor to be nominated, to stand with those nominees. I'm sure there's a good number. Without being disrespectful or talk facetious, I would say that being a social worker and inspiration is somewhat redundant when you think of the role we have and the work we do to inspire and to motivate and to do that in a way which, as advocates of individual agency, whether at the individual group, collective level. Back up a bit, I feel like I've been doing a lot of talking here today. I need to establish myself, situate myself. I've given you some of this before, but this is for me to remind myself who I am. My name given to me by my closest sales relatives is Chiteleqches. And the name when the checks come, is fewer than there was when I was working full-time boxing, is Dr. Richard Peters and Vedan. And I'll tell you something story. My great-grandfather, John Peters, was from Seabird, postal sales territory. In the 1800s, he moved north and married my great-grandmother, Catherine Moses, who was from Highball, just close to where that big landslide in Choco. And they raised their family in Clinton. My grandmother, Amelia Peters, was born in Clinton during the century, 20th century. I have to realize at 80, the turn of the century means we're in the 21st century. My father, Hector Peters, was born in Clinton, 1923. All my great-grandparents, my grandmother, and my grandfather, my father, were all sent to residential school, my mom. Mission, to Kamloops, Toronto, to St. Joseph's residential school, my father was there for 3 years until he contracted rheumatic fever. When he was 8, 9 years of age, and he was bedridden for a full year. He was nursed by his grandparents, Catherine and John, and recovered. He went on to serve in the Canadian Army, joined in 1914 when he joined in 1940 when he was 17. He had been adopted by his stepfather, Willie Abbey, who moved to Sugarcane. So that's the name, A.B. Wyatt, which is actually an Irish name. And then came to live with an aunt, his mother's older sister, Selena Vedan. And that was the name he used. And a social construct as convenient. Again, I still can't figure out how he was able to pass the medical, having had rheumatic fever for that period of time. How later he served overseas in North Africa, France, Italy, Germany, Holland. And he'd come back for 30 years because of his experience at the residential school, which he would never talk about. He was almost my age, in the 70s. My mother, Mary, was an English war bride from Brighton, Sussex, East London. In fact, I was born in wartime England in 1944. This was well before, somebody familiar with the Windrush vessel that took military veterans from the Caribbean to England in the late 40s. There had not been the impact of people of color in my town of Sussex. So my brother and I said, we were the only people, my father, were the only people of color in our community. It wasn't always comfortable being at school. And I would ask my father, on only one occasion, why was this? And I got what I later learned to be a residential school. Don't ever talk about that again. That's so painful for him to go to. And that was one of the rules. We don't talk about it. But the world around it is related to us in a different way. I'm sharing words here that are from my heart, from my spirit. I hope if some of you have other things to do and you're not have my full attention through media, I give you the opportunity to take your leave. I got a few notes. This is a textbook, England's Road to Social Security. Carl Schweinitz talks about England's road of how do we help each other from feudal times up until the National Health Fund. This is a textbook I used in 1973 when I taught at Lakehead University in Charlotte. I know people are from all four directions, but the background of our profession is within the Judeo-Christian culture, France, Canada, France, and England. So some of that will be in that idiom, and if you work from your own culture, you can find that translated into words that are new to you. The Magna Carta, Britain's Quarterly, 1912-15. That's a long time ago. What's the relevance to today in 2024? The Magna Carta established that the king or queen, the monarch, was not above law. Was not above the law. That's the basis of British common law. At the time of the feudal era, where they had the peasant and the feudal landlord, there was a greater sense of interdependence between the feudal landlord's health, feudal lady and landlord, and the workers. We no longer have the divine right of kings who are above the law. In our contemporary society, we have the divine right of corporate, the CEOs of multinational global corporations. Those corporations that are too big to fail. You see that with some of the current interactions that are taking place with labor unrest. There's always those who are the workers who are faulted for the inconvenience. It's never the corporations who are asked, put to task to justify their positions. So we're now in a situation where by coffee time on the first day of the year, the top leading corporate CEOs in this country and around the world have made more, or as much as the factory worker will make in that whole year. That is a huge discrepancy. And as Vedan said, there's always more work to do. There's recently a report from the United Nations commenting on Canada's migrant workers as being a manifestation of contemporary slavery. That is hard to dispute. You have people brought in at substandard below the contemporary norm for wages. But this fits with a philosophy and approach that was expressed in the 1700s by the Reverend Joseph Townsend, who was an economist and a priest in the Church in England. Said it seems to be the law of nature that the poor should be to a certain degree improvident, that there may well always be some to fulfill the most servile, the most sordid, and the most ignoble offices in the community. The stock of human happiness is therefore thereby much increased, while the more delicate are not only removed from the drudgery and freed from those occasional employments which would make them miserable, but are left at liberty without interruption to pursue those callings which are suited to their various dispositions. We keep people in a situation of homelessness, starvation, always being motivated to have to focus upon day-to-day survival. Some of you, like I said, Oscar Lewis, that's the name that was going to escape my mind, sociologist, wrote about people living in a state of being beyond anxiety, where people's circumstance of just making sure where the next meal would come from, it wasn't, it was focused on right now. That if they started to worry about the future, it would be overwhelming. So it would be closed down. I'm part of a study of doing drug and alcohol counseling with the military. I was very involved with the General Motors plants in Canada and the States, looking at the study about all they could tell when the car was produced, the vehicle was produced, and when it came for warranty work. The people would stand in the production line, the assembly line, doing the same thing remotely, and they would turn off as a way of survival. So then they would do something just to personalize it. They would weld something in place that they knew would create a rattle somewhere down the way. And they found that that was happening when people were doing what they referred to as easy time. This is people in corrections do easy time or hard time. And you tune out, you shut down. So you go into the factory and you turn off, and you come home and you try to turn on, but then you forget where the switch is. And everyone is the lesser of that. Another well-worn piece here is called Knots. R.D. Lang was a psychiatrist in Tavistock Institute, and relevance. Narcissus fell in love with his image, taking it to be another. Jack falls in love with Jill's image of Jack, taking it to be himself. She must not die, because then he would lose himself. He is jealous in case anyone else's image is reflected in her mirror. Now, R.D. Lang was in the 60s and 70s. The contemporary, I'm not into social media, because I'm going to say it right this time, I understand it. But I said people like Siri and Alexa, who will speak to you after they check out your algorithms. And like Jack looking for reassurance, will reflect back what it is you want to hear. Or they will screen out interaction with people that when we are in concert with your thinking. Having reassurance is great. It's also, you may be missing things. Now, I wish we were sitting in a circle. Raven rattle. Well, you can see that. If we were to look at that from the 360 degrees, sailor's terms, with the term boxing the compass, east, west, north, south, and you can break down into 360 degrees for 60 minutes and 60 seconds. What's the nature of this rainbow? The yellow cedar? How long would it take? Get into philosophy 101. What's the true nature of the tree? Could we ever establish a consensus amongst us about how this raven really looks? Each one of you are seeing it from a unique position. How the light strikes it. Each of you are seeing it through your own eyes. And have, maybe you've never seen a marine before. If you have, then maybe that will be the lens, will gauge the lens that you see the raven in. This has substance, as weight. What would happen if we had something which was not substantive? An ontology, a way of being, a way of knowing, a epistemology, a sense of a higher power. I want to have the reassurance that he sees things the way I do, my ontology. When we get to points where I will do it. But we get into why wars and battles are fought. Come into physical, the most basic conflict. I want you to agree with me and force you to agree with me. How do we deal with those differences in a way that's not working right now? You see that in far too many places of conflict and disaster. Again, I'm speaking about Judeo-Christian. I don't like to speak in binary terms. Indigenous, non-indigenous. Well, we're all indigenous or something. First Nation and non-First Nation. The scholar is comparing origin stories. When you've been to the Museum of Anthropology, there's a carving of Bill Reed, by the way, master carver. It's a raven opening a clamshell. And that's the Haida, the Genesis story of the Haida people. They come from the clamshell. Quadro people have a story that in the cedar tree, there's a place where the cedar overlaps. And their Genesis story is that that cedar tree opened up, and then Manetsuwe came out and said, I'm Quadro. I'm here to teach you what you know. In the Shrine territory, we have a story that our legend is that the old one walked the earth like a coyote and put things into order. In Judeo-Christian Genesis teaches us that there are 4 levels of creation. That's in concert with First Nations teachings. The first to be created by however one has a concept of a higher power is the cosmos. Mother Earth, Grandmother Moon, Grandfather Sun, Father Sky. Whether they expect Quadros and the stars are The stars are the ants, the Yankees, and the uncles. And that was the first level of creation, the cosmos. The second level of creation is the plant life, the trees that grow, the grasses that grow, all that use photosynthesis. The third level is the animal kingdom, the wing within the four legs. Then, on the sixth day of Genesis, created and the term human being, two legs. And then the Judeo-Christian terms are to have dominion over. But that was we are special creations. Everything is special. There's some differences between indigenous ways of doing it, describing, is that all things are alive. And we see that as Mother Earth stretches, we have eruptions and earthquakes, as earthquakes, now and again, just to remind us that all things are spiritual, all things have a right to exist. All things are sentient. And as opposed to being steward, have dominion over, which leads to commodification of. There was I'm going back some years, so the statute of limitations on slander is passed. There was a federal or provincial cabinet minister. And God would put those trees on those hills if it didn't mean for us to cut them down and make all kinds of money. Commodification. Teaching us to see as a two-legged, we are the youngest. Therefore, we have the most to learn. We are the most dependent upon the first two levels of creation. If we were to leave the trees, the wing within the four legs, they wouldn't just do well, they probably. Someone saying that in 18 months, if we stopped taking care of it, if we didn't start cutting trees down, there would be no reminder to be able to do it. So we have to remember that we're all related, that we're all interconnected. So that's in all my relations. And this isn't unique, this is not the monopoly of coastal serious people. If you go back into your own history, wherever it is, Mother Earth, continental India, Australia, Asia, Europe, you find stories. And in that you'll find your factory default setting. You know what your factory default setting is? This is a term I use for self-awareness. This has a factory default setting. Individually, our factory default setting is how do we conduct ourselves? How do we behave when we're under stress? Are we aware of when we're under stress? And are we aware of how we conduct ourselves? Back to ontologies, epistemologies. Plato raised humans above the animal kingdom, sentient beings. That was refined by Rene Descartes, Cartesian, I think, therefore I am. So there we can thank them for making all this work for social work. So they broke up. Well, this is the drama. The medicine wheel teaches us four directions: north, south, east, west. Again, this is my definition of the medicine wheel. My teacher of medicine said it. We are intellectual. We have needs and capacities as intellectual beings. We are emotional. We have needs and feelings. A full range. We are spiritual. The east is where the intellect is where the sun rises. It's where the eagle sits. My home Stahika, Twassen, is a big spar. There are eagles that sit out the parliament. And their view is like the view we have in the research you do, it's the view you have in textbooks. It's got long range view. And we need that. In the south, the color is yellow. In the south is the field mouse, or some creature close to the earth. And before I got two artificial knees installed, I would kneel down. And I would say the field mouse sees things up close, and we need to see. That's how we need to see things. And that's how we respond to our world emotionally until we get socialized out of it. Until we get over it. This is the spiritual sense of humor, that's the most subjective, that's the most personal, and it is so unique. However you do or don't. The physical self, the visceral, the world, the things we have beautiful things. But are they all of who we are? The place to be, I'm going to start dropping on begins here. Teachings of people being computers, distractors, colleges, is to be in the center. Physically, I know I like it when my pulse rate is about 60, 72. Can you hear me at the back? I'm using my longhouse voice. And I like it when I'm breathing about, respiration rate about 16 to 20. And my blood pressure is 120 over 80. I know if I slow down, I get a bit tired. If I get down here, I get asleep, unconscious, comatose. The other direction, I know that if I get excited, feverish, delirious, dead. Extremism, where it's physiological, extremism in any ideology, any belief, can be very dangerous. It is very dangerous to strike. So how does one, striking that balance of having passion, having that sense of you draw a great aesthetic pleasure from what it is you do. How does one maintain that balance? Without being trying to coerce by whatever force, try to click on me. I want you to think and feel and believe the same way I do, or else. That's a very vicious cycle of diminishing returns. I have to mention John Locke. This philosophy that someone could prove that they had a commodity that they could make more money out of the trees or the fish than they had a greater right to it. Back to the Old Testament, the Hamite, the curse of Ham, the people of color are cursed to be in servitude forever. So that's the justification of slavery. With respect to indigenous people, the people of the Western Hemisphere, the people of the continental Africa, the people of the Far East, of China. They were papal bulls of the 1400s. One was intercession, the doctrine of discovery, which basically said if you're a Christian and you discover land that's not being inhabited by Christians, it's yours. The other, that was terra nullius. The other was the versa, that the people who you encounter, if they're not Christian, Muslim, or Hebrew, then they were lesser beings. They were lesser beings. They could be either converted or rendered into perpetual sin. We're still dealing with the consequences of that. And that wasn't just reserved for the people away from England and Europe. The Scottish, the Irish, people of Celtic speaking for many generations were subject to the same colonial attitudes. Even as from Reverend Joseph Townsend spoke, the people who were whatever mainstream England was at the time were subjected based upon class to working conditions. I worked with a fellow when I was in high school. He was from Scotland, and I only knew him by the name Scotty. He was a very well-built man. He was a grandfather. He had worked for 25 years in the Scottish mines, 6 days a week. For 6 days a week, he would go underground before the sun rose and come up after the sun went down. And he did it because he had a family to support and there were no other choices. And he did it because there was a one-company town and no other choices. So it understood if you were working with Scotty, and if you were unloading 2x4s out of boxcars, or whatever, there's some, the unwritten rule was Scotty worked on the outside. But he wanted to be outside where you could see the sky, where you didn't care whether it was raining or not. That isn't human. Some one person can do that to another person. Now that I've got you all thoroughly depressed, there's some fundamentals that I've carried out. Again, somebody who said is the fall, the start of the fall is always kind of very interesting. It's 59 years ago that I was a 21-year-old freshman at the University of Western Ontario. And where being native, I think exactly where and how and why. It was lonely because there were only two other people in London, Ontario that were of Indian background. I think David Miracle, I can't sure for the first name, but he was from the Haudenosaunee, and Mary Carpenter. And I was and we're wondering what we were doing. So now, a little less time than that, I was sitting with you with your starting the MS study. Social work, the things I carry with me is that social work is about relationship. holistic communication. Intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, physically. Intrapersonal communication and interpersonal communication. I have a cartoon from Peanuts. I used to use it as an example of intrapersonal communication. The frames of the cartoon show Snoopy going for a run. And the self-talk that goes on. Some of you may be old enough to be aware of seeing that cartoon strip. And as you go in, all these little bubbles of information. Feet to brain. I'm tired. How much longer do you have to go on? Stomach. I'm hungry. And so on comes. That self-talk. That's interpersonal communication. Are we aware of the self-talk that goes on within us as intellectual, emotional, spiritual beings? So that when we want to communicate interpersonally, we can send out a nice package that will not get completed. Well, just as I said that Plato Rene Descartes and others have spent the time splitting up intellect, emotion, spiritual. Our role in relationship and communication is help people come back together. And doing it in a way that is not, they do not rely on us, but a way which gives agency and sense of purpose and control. Authenticity in a relationship. That's the question. If you have to work at being authentic, is that authentic? Another reference to R.D. Laing. This became very familiar to me. I remember having, when I came back, when I came to, well, I did come back to Vancouver in 77, spending time with Leonard George. Chief Chan George is buddy with the chief at Secwepemc. And Leonard, who's passed the other side, he was a bit younger than me. We were the same age, and we are partners, like partners and children. What about the struggles of looking for a job description for being, what's the job description for being an adult Native Indian male? Now, there's a book called The Imaginary Indian that gives you the church. You can be the shaman, you can be the environmentalist, medicine man, you can be the drunken Indian, or at the time you could be the American Indian Movement warrior. But what fit for you? And that was also a double bind in that, because if you were truly a member of the Tsleil-Waututh, that meant you would know what the job description was. As a member of the Secwepemc, I was under, well, if I am truly Secwepemc, I should, where's that gene that tells me what to do? And in the Air Force, what I find is talk about the right stuff. These are the hot shot jet jockeys. Talk about having the right stuff. These are the guys who went into space. And the teacher was, if you have it, you know it. And if you don't have it, you have to ask what it is you can't get. Not much unlike Plato's philosopher kings, that if you're cast into a position, that's your lot. There's something I don't know that I'm supposed to know. I don't know what it is, I don't know. And yet I am supposed to know. I feel I look stupid if I seem both not to know it and not know what it is I don't know. Therefore, I pretend to know it. This is nerve-wracking. Since I don't know what it is I must pretend to know, therefore I pretend to know everything. Like elements of social practice, relationship, communication. Engaging in relationship, establishing rapport that is respectful, safe, so those questions can be asked. When my father Hector, who I loved, he never used physical force, corporal punishment, as a result of his experience also his experience in the residential school. All he had to do was look at us, and we'd scramble for what we were to do. So if we could talk about one thing, you take from there, what can you talk about? You're going to Americans College. We're going to the presentation on getting the challenges of getting to okay in the telling of forbidden stories. What does that mean? Getting to okay with someone close to you, we're going to talk about things that were verbal. How hard that is when you don't even know what it is you're talking about. But how important it is. But that again is derived from the potlatch law. It took me a while until I learned that my father Hector attended residential school. He had no relationship with the father. So he didn't know how to be a father to my brother and I, and to my three sisters. So how do you deal with that? That's the challenges you have, for both positive and negative. Yeah, things that have come to stay with me, and I've learned, is that in that relationship, there's no such thing as a casual encounter. Among ourselves, the individuals you interact, the people you pass on the street. There's no such thing as a casual encounter. And we live in we are in a small world, we move very rapidly. We have a technology which is an integration of intellect, sort of physical and intellectual side, that can get us, earlier this summer I was spending time with a maternal family in England. It took me 9 hours to get there. For a week after I came back, physically, emotionally, intellectually now here, but my spirit is somewhere over that, trying to catch up. Many of the issues we have a technology that's so far in advance of where we are intellectually and emotionally. When you think of some of the challenges of the Industrial Revolution, the challenge of medieval, the land enclosures, the removal of people from the land. How do we close that circle? I've used the analogy of when our children were younger, we had to find, again I'm going back 50 years, they didn't home daycare. Get on with it. Or Raven, who's also the church figure. But a period of social change, right, was just mind-boggling. And what I want to raise my hands to you for what you've accomplished to get yourself to this point in your career. Within the most extraordinary challenges of the pandemic, of the conflict that is worldwide. And also to my colleagues and faculty who scramble to deal with how to revise curriculum, how to present curriculum in a way which will present. And that you were able to persevere and face it. And it was not without casualties. And I hope we're able to get back to holistic communication, because Zoom calls, distance learning really doesn't need, even though we think it does because we get adapted to it. And like narcissists, we get things reflected back to us that make us feel comfortable, and that becomes the norm. But moving back to that whole person, holistic relationship. So, no such thing as a casual encounter. The other element that I've made part of my personal and professional is involvement with professional associations and with regulatory bodies. And I'll draw that into an analogy of how much a dancer or someone who's initiating into sweat lodge or fasting, where you go out, as I've done on a number of occasions, go and spend time in a small area without food and water for 4 or 5 days, and just watch the world go by. And you may be gifted with a song, or you may be gifted with creatures that come by. And in Stolo, the big house, we're here as part of the initiation. So when the Hamatsar and Quadrillo of Stolo would come and they would be made aware of their gifts, they would present to the community gathered that they were aware that they could do evil to the community with the insights they've been given. And they were also communicated that they were aware that they could be a contributing member of the community. To me, that's what the fees are for BCSW, as I've been paying. Discount being a 35-year lifetime member. I don't get a discount for being registering with the College of Social Work. However, those organizations had two very important but different purposes. The Board of Registration is the regulatory body. Its sole purpose is protection of the public from harm that damages you. As social workers, we have that incredible privilege to become aware of the nature of human behavior, the interaction of human behavior, interpersonal behavior. That's power. That's influence if it's used disrespectfully. Say when I chaired the board, it was on the standards of practice. There were occasions when someone, there was disciplinary action, they had to do with people taking advantage, people who were not respecting the boundaries in relationship and exploiting that. So that protection of the public. So really, I think that as I'm inviting each and every one of you, colleagues otherwise, to remark and keep me balanced. The purpose of the profession association is to promote the profession and to promote standards of practice and to contribute to the health. Then we get some areas we have collective bargaining units, where the purpose is to ensure that the support, the salary and so forth is reasonable. I also had the privilege of sitting on the, it's now called the Canadian Association of Social Education, which is to the accreditation. There was the Canadian Association of Schools of Social. Two functions. There was the board and then there was the accreditation. Many of the initiatives and the changes in the schools have not been well, have come about because of changes in accreditation. Accreditation required provision for two-spirited people of LGBTQ and other. It required curriculum that included First Nations. Just as for very long included curriculum that was relevant to our practitioners and colleagues in Quebec. So all of those separate bodies get into difficulty if one tries to do more than one function. And because they're not sure what is their primary, what's the raison d'etre. An active, basic social purpose, structure, process. And that can get confused if you have too many purposes. So I encourage you to take advantage of your student discount to join PCSW. I don't think that's for the board of registration. But there's harm at the area of social work. I'm aware of something. A lot of the time, social workers get into trouble. They're not really social workers. They have not been trained. And that's where information is coming. A young nephew who was one of the victims, and the person who fraudulently portrayed himself and was a custodian and access opportunity for his clients and was exploiting them financially in other ways. When you're doing your research, you do have OCAP Tri-Council research. OCAP is ownership, control, access, and possession. Access doesn't mean just you can get to it. I remember going, access means, is it understandable? I remember picking up a journal and saying, this must be really good. I don't understand a single word. Communicating. Use of acronyms. That can be used. Every one of those MCFDs, MHR, END. I've been speaking of those on this efficient myself. During our family counseling, a lot of it was around miscommunication with people who are both fluent speakers of an English language, common language, but they made assumptions without checking them out. So communication, relationship. And there's still colonialism within academia. Now I'm spending time with Dr. Winona Wheeler from Saskatchewan, Andy Valley, Dr. Valley Vic, Dr. David Sigmund, it's cross Canada looking at Indigenous specific racism within academia and in this day. There's still a neo-colonial attitude that the natural scheme of things is that as an academic, I have to publish, I need information of which to publish. You are an Indigenous person in the community, I have the right to counsel. One of my good friends, Cosmas, from Kinka, he was a carver as well as being a leader in his community politically and spiritually. He told the story of he and Uncle Martin were carving in the provincial museum. And tourists would come by, and they would ask about what they were doing, what's the story. And I said, what would you tell them? And he said, well, it depended upon their attitude. He said they were at all patronizing, or condescending, they would talk amongst themselves and make up a story and tell them, and then laugh at them. He said someone came with genuine interest, respectfully, he would tell them the story that was behind the carving. He said the difficulty was each person thought they had the truth. Each person thought they were entitled to it. They're among us, none of us here, in the university, some people feel they're entitled to the truth. Some of those people are ones who are most widely published, most highly regarded by government. And when they send in their papers, that gets translated into programs, policy, and expenditure of money, which goes into the communities, and people are surprised when things don't work out as they're supposed to. Thank you. We have come a long way. Sometimes I think we're going backwards. I think of the current great support of all that, and various liberal governments. Two stories of Trudeau Sr., who was responsible for the White Paper, 1969, that was going to do away with First Nations, maybe as a way of solving what he referred to as the Indian problem. We have now our Truth and Reconciliation. I don't agree with that, because there is no reconciliation. You have to be conciliatory to begin with, or you can be reconciled. There's nothing to reconcile with. It's not if, it's when you interact in your practice. I can't think of an area of social practice in which you will not engage with some of my relatives. How will you feel? How do you situate yourself in terms of your journey in that journey? From my Airnab and sailing days, I think we're on a journey that we're on now, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical journeys. There are two parts, or a number of parts to a journey. One is having a destination, a goal, a vision for self. For many years, for many generations, Native Indians, my relatives, we were told by authorities we were entitled to have that vision. And if you tried, you were bound to be defeated, so you stopped trying. But we're now at the point where there's individuals who have set destinations and are working towards them. I think back to individuals who are the children of individuals who are my students, who are now doing doctorates. I know I'm getting old when someone retires as a full professor, on whose committee I was doctoral. Things to look forward to, but things are changing. Equally important to knowing what your destination is knowing what's your point of departure. If I'm sailing, I think that's west, there's a green chunk of metal. No, it's just red. Floating. Yeah, there's a red point where you're going? Yeah. I used to know the number. But it's not unlike a lot of the people in these navigational buoys floating up there. And if you don't look closely, if it is foggy, you may think you're at the point where you're going, when you're not. It could be somewhere else. And if you're setting a course for an island, and you don't get it right, you're going to run into Snake Island, when you least expect it. There's a big chunk of granite. The same thing is knowing where your point of departure is. What's your factory default setting? Where are you leaving from? Intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. And when you do that, you have a right to feel good about where that point is. There may be some things you don't like about it, but you go through them, they are part of who you are. And wherever you're from in the four directions, you have a right to believe in yourself. Right to feel positive, as long as it's not expensive. Now the other part in a journey is a point of no return. Where you have, if I'm going to get from here to there, I have to let go here. If I don't know where here is, I may not go, I may never let go, I hang on tenaciously. Because if I have to regress in the ego, I may not find my way back. And that, one time I was talking about, that's the definition of a character. Or it's a people traumatized. Wherever you are in your social, intellectual, emotional, physical journey, you are physically in coastal Salish territory. People of the Musqueam, people of the river belts. I'll leave you to reflect where you are intellectually, emotionally, spiritually. Again, you're the boss of you, but I invite you to get firmly planted. No double please. Out here we have the coastal Salish Sea, the Salish Sea, the semi-diurnal tide that goes up and down over 16 feet 4 times a day. Teaching that when the tide comes in, it brings us nourishment, and as we breathe out, it takes all the things away that we don't need. And it is very good for the breathing. As you do that, I'm going to sing a few rounds of the coastal Salish anthem. George Anderson. But before I do that, I'm also going to give thanks for the food we will be sharing. For the wing, the fin, the four-leggeds that gave us life, that we may be nourished. For the plant life that gave itself, that we may be nourished. For those who gathered, that we may be nourished. There is a duality to all things, including music. Music can be very inspiring. It is inspiring. It can also be inspiring in a long way. I heard a song early on. That's really good for a marathon running. And it will carry you sometimes further than it should. You end up with bionic knees like me. The next time I saw Annie Michelle talking, I said, Annie, thank you for the cardiovascular song. Could you please teach me the knee cardio song? The companion.
Hey!
well. Have fun. It's important work you do. Take care of yourself. And just welcome the word step means to practice, to do things that will help you take care of yourself at times of when you need it. To get back to running, if you wait until you're thirsty to drink, it's too late. If you wait for self-care until you need it, it's too late. So have those in place. I expect you will be hearing teaching about self-care from other of my colleagues. Coach on my relations.